Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Burns, and I'm an associate chair here in the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering. It's really my great pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 Spring Hyatt Lecture. This is a leadership series that was established in 2015 through the generosity of civil engineering alum Kenneth Hyatt. Today is momentous because this is our 20th Hyatt Lecture in the school. It's our truly great honor to welcome Mr. Tzegaegbe today to be our speaker. Jacob is Vice President of Global Strategy for ADI Global Distribution, where he directs strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and serves as the part of the leadership team. Jacob previously served as City of Atlanta's Senior Transportation Policy Advisor and as Special Advisor to Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Jacob is a Georgia Tech alum. He earned his BS and MS degrees in civil engineering in 2011 and 2013. And while he was a student at Tech, his list of service and honors was long and extensive. He served as senior class president. He was awarded NSBE Distinguished Engineer of the Year, ODK National Leader of the Year. He was Alpha Phi Alpha Regional Leader of the Year. He was an academic All-American diver with the Georgia Tech swim and dive team. He was elected Mr. Georgia Tech by his peers, and most notably, he was named a Marshall Scholar. He went on to complete an MS degree at University of College London, where he studied financial investment in African infrastructure. So this list of accomplishments would be amazing for anyone, right? But I think it's truly remarkable because Jacob is the son of immigrants and he's a first-generation college graduate. I first met Jacob about 15 years ago or so. He was in my undergraduate geotechnical engineering course, and I clearly remember the first conversation we ever had. I had just handed back my first exam, and Jacob had not done as well as he expected. Do you remember this even? He probably doesn't even remember this. So when this happens, there's lots of reactions students can have. They can be sad or cranky, unhappy, or angry. But I remember Jacob was just really surprised, really surprised. So he came up to talk to me afterwards, and we talked through what had happened and had some suggestions and gave him some thoughts for the next exam. But I knew immediately that I had met someone very different, very unusual. So much so that I remember going home that night and telling my family about Jacob and talking to my young kids how I had met someone who was very unusual. And that quick impression that I had of him was exactly correct. Jacob's expansive curiosity, his unrelenting questioning, and his ability to see the big picture, as well as his clarity of vision, distinguish him in everything that he does. I'm sure today, although I haven't seen this talk, I'm sure today we're going to see a thread that runs through his work. And what you'll see is that the work he does requires strategic thinking, planning, and expansive vision. That's because he uses his insight and he leverages his questioning nature to weave a picture in order to create what the future can be. Not the future as we see it right now, but what we as engineers can create, what we can do to make a more sustainable future. And so it's with great pleasure that I invite you to join me in welcoming Jacob Tzegaegbe for our 2025 Hyatt Lecture.
Thank you. Hear me okay? Sounds coming through? That was the coolest introduction I've ever had in my life. I feel very accomplished standing up here right now. And I'm super excited to chat with you all today. As mentioned, my name is Jacob Tzegaegbe. Graduated. I remember being in this room, a lot of classes in this room. It's very cool to be up here on this side of this room, though. So excited to chat. So let me jump in. Right here in the center. What's your name? Yeah. Abraham. Can I share something? I am so jealous of you. You have any idea why? Do you have any idea why I'm so jealous of you? Anybody have any guess as to why? Nothing's wrong. Throw out anything.
It's a laminated name.
Good guess. Good guess. I do not have one, but it's not the answer, but I'll take the guess. Let's go. Nice. He's got a good, well, he might have a bad view actually, but he does have a view. All right. I'm going to come back to that. Let's jump in. So I'm going to talk about a few things today. First, second, living for the season, and third, thoughts on weather. And you'll see how I pull this all together. But who am I? Where do I come from? That's kind of how I got to where you are. Living for the season. That's how I kind of built. I've thought about building my life since I've left Georgia Tech. And then some thoughts on the weather, which are just literally random thoughts that I put together that I think might be helpful. But my hope is that some of these pieces are helpful for you as you matriculate through Georgia Tech and think about the rest of the life that you're building. And, I feel young. I feel old. I have a little bit of wisdom. So hopefully there's something in here that's helpful. So first, who am I? A first generation American who got into his reach school and found himself, just to find out he was just getting started. And that's the way I like to describe myself. And I'll tell you a little bit about each of those. So first, there we go. A first generation American. Two pictures on the right. On the top, you'll see two of the most important people in my life, my mother and my father. My father was born in Nigeria in a really small village. He left home when he was 12. He wanted to go to school. And at that point, when in Nigeria, if you wanted to go to that level of school, family had no money. And could find a way. So he left home and started his life. Went and worked as a houseboy for the family. Ended up finding a way secondhand school and working his way to the secretary. My mother on the left, she's from Israel. You don't often hear about Nigerian and Israelis having kids. But my dad in Nigeria had to find more opportunity, ended up in Egypt. And at that time, actually crossed the Sinai Peninsula, Israel. And I met my mom there. My mom is an exceptional human being. There were not a lot of Israeli Jewish women in the 1970s who are looking to date Nigerian men. That says a lot about my personality and how she's been most people who went against the grain her whole life. But my mom, similarly, never went to high school, dropped out of school, middle school, served her time in the Israeli military. Two of them came together to have my older sister. At that point, my older sister was about 1 year old. And my dad, like every Nigerian of this generation, said, I want to come to America. I want the American dream. And the two of them actually is a very important story, context of everything going on right now. They flew from Israel to Washington, D.C., to Mexico. And they paid somebody to take them across the border to come to this country, undocumented. And across the border, and there's a whole bunch of stories I can tell you about in the early 80s, but they were caught, detained. And at that point in time, it was catch you at least. So they were told you have 30 days to leave the country. And of course, they didn't. And they began like in Florida before moving to Atlanta. So in 1989, the year that I was born, I was the first American citizen. At that point, my parents had found a pathway to a green card, but nobody in my family was a citizen. Fast forward, I have a very big family. Well, 8 kids. And first person in my family to go to college. A lot of really important things have happened because my parents took risk. They came to this country to live the American dream. And I feel very fortunate to have been a part of that journey and know that every day waking up, I'm here for a reason because my parents are very fundamental to who I am. So, my entire life growing up, my dad's Nigerian, and if anybody knows, Nigerian parents are all about education. And if anybody knows a Nigerian parent who didn't afford to get educated, they're all about education. So I heard education. You're going to go to college. You need to do this. My dad had no idea what it took to go to college. He just knew I was going to go because, he would have if he had the opportunity. So I remember being in high school and I was, coming up, I guess this year. I went to my dad. I was like, can I have $100? He's like, what do you need $100 for? I was like, I need to apply to college. He was like, okay, that's a good reason. He gave me $100 and I went to the bank because I just opened up a bank account and I put the $100 in the bank account. And then I drove over to Republic Library And I sat down for an hour and applied to 3 schools. Georgia Tech, it was my reach school. Virginia Tech, it was my target school. And Auburn, it was my safety school. I did that somewhere and I was like, I got to apply to 3 schools and those are the 3. And luckily Auburn waived the application fee. So I could use $100 to apply to 3 schools. And I got into Georgia Tech. It was so it wasn't exactly something I was hopeful for it. I was a good student, but I wasn't a great student in high school. And, also I was playing athlete and that probably helped a little bit as well. I applied. So I came to Georgia Tech. I remember at the start of it, I was thinking, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Wow. I can graduate with Georgia Tech. That'll be the most amazing thing ever. I just need to graduate. And if I'm going to graduate, I need to keep the Hope Scholarship. So let's figure it out. And when I got here, I totally found myself. I had never been challenged the way I had been challenged at Georgia Tech. I had never really come into something that every day I had to wake up and really work for it. I did all types of things. So I was a student athlete that for 2 years. After my second year, I gave up athletics and I said, I really want to leadership. And I got involved in a ton of organizations, ambassadors, student foundation, all these different pieces. As part of that, I had the amazing, fortune and opportunity to be Mr. Georgia Tech and represent the school in that way. And it was an amazing night, one of the best memories of my life. You'll see another picture from that. I stuck around and did a master's degree. So I got to speak at my master's commencement, which was really cool. And I got to meet LL Cool J. That's not the highlight of the story, but it is a highlight of the story. It was pretty cool. There's nothing like being introduced by LL Cool J to give you an award. Something like getting an award where everybody's more excited about the person awarding you than you. But that was all here. And what I realized, and I didn't know at the time, was that I was just getting started. And you're sitting in the seat right now, and you have no idea what is ahead of you. I'm going to come back to that, but there's some exciting things. And I had no idea what was ahead. I had the fortune of winning a Marshall Scholarship. I got to go to the UK, 2 more master's degrees after I wrapped up at and I had an amazing experience. I got to go to 10 Downing Street. I met King Charles, who was Prince Charles at the time. I went to public service. I didn't start my career there, but I went there and got to do really cool things like be it, press releases and trying to move all this work forward for Atlanta, my home that I love. I was part of Georgia Tech's 40 under 40. But most importantly, I met my wife at Georgia Tech. We met at Bassett freshman year. We lived in the same dorm home. And those stories of like you met and like you fell in love and you were college sweethearts? That was not us. Yeah. Elise still calls me Jake. We actually fell out that year, did not talk again until my graduation. We bumped into each other at my graduation. And then I moved to London and like we text and all that. And actually we didn't reconnect until I moved back from London, like more than 5 years after we graduated, and reconnected. And we have our daughter, Etsy, who you can see on the right side, who is a new chapter in my life and has been absolutely wonderful. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So that's a little bit about me. But I want to talk about some thoughts on what I've seen since I left Georgia Tech and maybe share a little bit of that with you. And hopefully it's helpful. And I call it living for the season. So anybody want to be this guy? What's wrong here? Any guesses? Pardon? More close. This is somebody who clearly needed to get to class. I stole this picture online. Credit, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin Medicine, but clearly knew where you want to go. You want to go to class. Looks like a backpack, headphones in. What I look like when I went to class in Atlanta in the summer. Walking there and clearly not. The weather, it's the winter. Clearly, I think, I don't know, Wisconsin, it might so at any point, but not dressed for it, but knows exactly where he's going. And I actually use this analogy because I think actually this can be life. You're about to enter the next season of your life. And as you enter seasons, you have to think about what does this season mean, right? If the season is winter, I need to work. I need to figure out where I'm going and not freeze. I don't need to wear, shorts or flip-flops. And I need to be prepared because going to the right place at the wrong time, dressed the wrong way is actually a horrible experience. And you don't want to be doing that in your career, in your life. And I have a philosophy around that I want to share, and hopefully it's something that resounds with you, and I'll talk a little bit about. So when you see my professional journey, you sit here, you look at it, and you're like, I'll talk through it all, but it makes no sense at all. It absolutely makes no sense. I started off drilling engineer at ExxonMobil. I interned there when I was a student. Then I went and started my career as a consultant at McKinsey & Company, spent a few years there. And then I went into public service, and I was a senior advisor to the mayor of Atlanta. And okay, that's all cool. Then I went into startup life, and I was at a company called Via, deploying technology around the country. And then I left startup life and went to a public company called Snap One that makes technology for homes. And then now I'm part of like a larger company that does distribution strategy there. Makes no sense. Would have never told you I was going to do this journey. But I can actually tell you exactly why I've done this journey and what I was solving for at the time. And, I think that can be really helpful as you reflect on what you want to do. So you take one thing away from this whole presentation is these 6 bullets. My personal opinion that when you're moving through life, you need to know what season you're in. And there are 6 variables for determining the season that you're solving for. Pay, how much money you're making. Professional development, the skills that you're going to get. Progression, how does this position you for where you want to go? People, who are you working with? Who are you spending your time? Super important factor. Purpose, does this fulfill you? Is this what you want to do in this world with your life? And then lastly, personal. You're going to be working, you're going to be doing things, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's happening outside of where you're at, and how you think about it. And any given time, I would really challenge anybody to say, I'm making a decision on what I'm doing. Graduating, taking my first job, or transitioning between careers. Which of these is most important? And what's second? What's least important? And am I making sure that I'm making decisions and solving for the things that are most important to me at this point in my life? Because guess what? The order of these will change for you all the time throughout life. And if you don't know what order these are in and you're making decisions with them out of order, that's when you get out of whack. And that's how people end up unhappy and not fulfilled. So, if you ask me, the takeaway from all of this is just really, life isn't about getting from point A to B. You're going to go from point A to B. It's about, as you're going on that journey, making sure that you're doing what you want to do at the right time in your life, because throughout the next 10 years of your life, a lot of things are going to change. And if you're using the thoughts that you had today alone, you're not going to be happy. So let me talk you through that journey a little bit and tell you how I did. Any ideas on what this picture is or represents? Take a guess. And throw it out. A mall that's closing. Great idea. It is a mall that's closing or a shop that's closing. I went online to make this presentation. I Googled Great Recession. And this is the first picture that came up. It was a Brookings Institute picture. That's when I was looking for a shop in the middle of the recession. And my dad had built a construction company, and I always knew that I was coming to Georgia Tech to study engineering. I picked civil engineering, never met someone in my life out here, but I knew that it was close to the construction. I almost became an architect. My dad was like, I don't know much about college, but you're not going to be an architect. No shade to my architect friends. It was great advice. We all have architect friends. Rough life. But so I construction. So I was looking for my first job, and I really wanted to work in construction. I was like, one day I want to run my family's company. That's really what I want to do. Let me get some experience at a big construction firm. And guess what people were not doing during the Great Recession? Building anything. Guess what construction firms weren't doing? Hiring people like me. So I couldn't find a job, and I was looking around, and I was like, all right, well, I gotta pivot. I gotta figure things out. And I got my first job at ExxonMobil. It wasn't a full-time job, it was an internship, but I kind of view this as the beginning of my, kind of professional career. What was I solving for? Like, candidly, I'd almost been kicked out of tech because I couldn't pay my bills my freshman year. Literally came down to the wire, had to borrow money from a family friend. And I was like, I need to figure out how to make some money. And if I'm going to solve for something, what's a high paying job? And at that time, ExxonMobil was like the internship everybody wanted. They paid a bunch of money. And I was like, this is awesome. Secondly, it was going to be great professional development. As an engineer, I was like, I'm going to get really good hard technical skills, and it'll put me on this progression. Progression being very important. That was third most important. People, I wasn't so concerned. I was like, I'm going to go there. I don't know, the environment. I'm coming in. I want to work with great people, but that's not really what I'm solving for. Purpose, drilling oil out of the ground, not my purpose. Okay, I wasn't solving for it. I knew that I had a purpose, but I didn't need to put that purpose right now. And then lastly, personal. They drilled in Angola. The project work I was working on was in Equatorial Guinea. I didn't go there, but that's where it was. Send me anywhere. I'll go. I have no strings. I'm good for it. And it was the perfect kind of solving for what I was looking for at that time. And, I had a great experience. I learned a lot and it fit what I needed in the moment. So as I was wrapping up that internship, I got a full-time offer. And that full-time offer was more money than anybody in my family had ever made. It was a 6-figure offer straight out of undergrad. At that time, that was a massive offer. I was super excited. And I had a mentor in my life, Dr. Reginald DeRoche. He's actually given one of these talks before. He was a professor at Georgia Tech at the time. And I was not thinking about going to grad school. It just wasn't really on my radar. I told y'all, I wanted to graduate from Georgia Tech. It would be the greatest accomplishment ever. And he was like, you should apply for this BS MS thing. And in 5 years, you can get an undergrad and master's degree. And you should get a master's. And actually, you should probably get a PhD, Jacob. And you should apply for this NSF fellowship. And you should go and do that. And these are all things that I had no idea about and were not on my radar. My eyes were open. And I can tell you right now, the only reason I went and got a master's was because somebody helped me think about that as the right decision. The only reason I applied to be a Marshall Scholar and got to go get 2 more degrees in the UK was because I had somebody in my life who could see beyond what I could see. I had a lot of people in my life, but this is just one. So, I got that full-time offer. I decided, right for me, I don't want to solve for that right now. And I went off to grad school. And as I was going off to grad school, I got the opportunity to do another internship. And I sold for something a little bit different as I did that. So while I was at Tech, I interned at McKinsey & Company. It was a really good experience. The way it was pitched to me was like, it's really hard to get a job here. And I kind of like to try to do hard things. So I went to interview and I went through all the case stuff and I got the full-time offer and had a great summer. I was about to start full-time. And then I won the Marshall Scholarship. So I moved across to the UK. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I went to McKinsey, started my career. What was I solving for? Professional development. At that point, I was like, I'm starting my career. I want to learn as many skills as possible. I was going to be paid really well, which was great. I felt like it was great progression. Somebody had told me a stat at the time, which I think is still true, that McKinsey has produced more CEOs than any company in the world. And I was like, I really want to lead people. This is a great place to go. The people were good. They're really good. Great people I worked with, but that wasn't what I was specifically solving for. Purpose. More purpose in drilling oil, but not exactly aligned to my purpose in life, but I felt okay with that. And again, personal didn't care. I traveled 4 days a week, every week, on the road, in a plane. Awesome. Didn't care. I wasn't tied down to anything and I was moving. And I was there for about 2 years. And then another lesson happened. So when I was a Marshall Scholar, I had a bunch of buddies and the 2 individuals who are on my left side, your right in this picture, Nico and Nick, we got really a bunch of time, in our house that we lived in with another roommate, talking about life and the things that we aspired to do and how we wanted to change the world and, all of that. And then of course, they moved back to New York and I moved to Atlanta and we started our careers and I went off and, I was making more money than I ever thought I'd make in my life. And they came down to Atlanta for my birthday and we were drinking at the loft that I was living in. And we were talking about what was going on and they're like, hey, Atlanta just elected a new mayor, right? Yeah. Like, have you looked into that? I was like, yeah, actually I have. I talked to some folks. I got a job offer actually. It's pretty cool. Like they'll let me work on transportation and housing stuff I'm super passionate about, but it's like less than half of what I'm making now. And like, come on. And they're like, whoa, hold on. You've got an offer to go and work for Atlanta doing the thing that you've always told us you want to do. And you're not going to do it because of money. You're not the person you say you are. 2 weeks later, I went back to McKinsey and I said I was leaving and I was going to go join city government. If I hadn't sat down and had that conversation and had them sanity check me and realize, hey, like, don't let life carry you away. Like, think about who you are. I wouldn't have made the decision to leave, this high, fast-paced consulting firm that was paying me very well to go and do what I really cared about. So find those people in your life that are going to help you and keep you grounded. And they might be in this room right now. Progress and service, time to serve. So I went to city government. I was really passionate. I was really arrogant as well. I was like, I'm so smart. I'm going to be able to do all these great things and change everything. And I really made the decision around purpose. I said, I really care about Atlanta. I think there's a lot of great stuff that we could be doing. And I'm going to go and make this leap. Personally, it was really good as well. Elise and I had reconnected. We were in a serious relationship. It was moving towards marriage and it was really good to be in town and not be traveling as we kind of, built that relationship further. And then pay was not great. Progression was not great. This was not a smart career move for a progression standpoint. Professional development, this wasn't going to give me the next round of skills I needed. And people, it didn't really solve for working with, a bunch of Harvard, Stanford MBAs like I had been at McKinsey. But those weren't the things that were important to me at this point, right? And I realized I was in a new season and that it was time to go and apply some of the things I learned and serve. And I had a really great experience. I really love the motto progress and service, and I've tried to build my career around it. And I will say time and service is always well spent. Some people will spend their whole career there. Some people will move between the public and private sector, but I had an awesome time. One of the coolest things I got to do was Atlanta at the time didn't have a Department of Transportation. We had 3 different departments that did a bit of transportation. And I spent about a year doing a bunch of things, rebaselining an infrastructure program that was in very poor shape, and then building a Department of Transportation that we felt like was really important to help. I mean, we've all been stuck in traffic in the city. We've all driven over potholes. We've all walked on sidewalks that aren't in great shape. And it was a really great experience. There are a whole slew of other things that I got to work on. And, towards the end of my tenure, I started to work on a lot of social policy. So I was working on, thinking about police reform in Atlanta during 2020 when there was all the unrest and everything that was going on in the country. And actually, the city of Atlanta had somebody, who lost his life, who was unarmed to APD. And, it was a really interesting experience. I grew a ton out of it. And coming out of it, the mayor asked me, hey, I'd love for you to move out of just doing transportation policy to doing all policy, including social policy. And for me, that was a really interesting moment and a moment to take a step back and say, is this my purpose? And actually at that moment, I said, I don't think it is. There were a whole slew of reasons that I can get into if there's questions about it as to why I said, hey, I've been here 2.5 years. I feel really good about the work I've done, but I'm going to keep on moving. And it was time to move on. And it was a decision I made with Elise, my wife. We actually had just bought a new house. We went and bought a brand new Subaru Forester. And we said, we're going to take 3 months off and we're going to do a road trip across America. And we're going to sleep in our Forester, which is why we bought it, because you can put a mattress in the back. And we're going to go to every national park that we've never been to. And we're going to do all this super cool stuff. And we don't know what jobs we're going to get next. We'll figure it out. But, we really want to do a trip together. And I'll come back to that because I think it's super important. It's something I've tried to do throughout my entire career. And it was a big break. And I said, hey, we're in a new season. And I made another job choice. So I joined a company called VIA. And as you can see, there was no 5 on here. I was solving for a number of things as I was coming out, but I couldn't say there was one. I got to balance purpose with professional development. So I got to get back in the private sector, but I got to do it bringing public transport and technology to communities across America. And I felt really good about balancing those 2 things. The pay was good. The people were good. Neither of those I would say were off the charts. And personally, it was good. I didn't have to travel all the time, but I worked a lot and I did have to go to Tel Aviv and go to deployments across the country, which had some travel. From a progression standpoint, it was definitely better than being in city government. But it wasn't, again, you start to see the story. It's all over the place. So it wasn't like I was building towards the perfect next opportunity, but I had an awesome time and I learned a ton. I got to manage a big team. I got to work on deployments all across the country. One of them we deployed was in Delaware. It was actually my very first launch. And actually, the person that we launched it for was the chief innovation officer, who under the Biden administration went on to be the head of the FTA. And she was amazing. And it was a great experience. We launched services in Valdosta. Actually, if you've ever been up to Buckhead, there's a system called the Buck Shuttle. It runs on our technology, the vehicles we went and sourced. We launched a really cool service down in Florida. Bright Line Rail System is down there. It actually book a single seat ride or book a single ride that would pick you up at your house, take you to the train station, take a high speed rail into, call it West Palm Beach, and then it would drop you off at the last location. And both of those legs would be, supported by a Tesla or an EV vehicle. And we built all the technology that allowed for it. It was a really cool experience. I got to pivot out of government, pivot into technology, and had a great experience. And towards the end of this, I'd gone from a principal to being a director over all of our launches. And then from there, a CEO called me one day. It was, a year being promoted and was like, we'd like for you to be, I'd like for you to take on a new role. I really think it'd be awesome for you to go from your 15-person team and take over another 40 people, all based in Tel Aviv. And I was like, hey, I've been trying to be a VP in this company. That's awesome. I've always wanted to be a global leader. That's really cool. This is an awesome opportunity. However, he asked me to do it right as we were pregnant with our first. And I'd love for you to do this. All it means is that, you've got 12 weeks of parental leave. I'd like for you to take 4 of them, but then I need you to be able to go out to Tel Aviv. And you can take the rest of your leave afterwards, but we need you back. And actually, if your whole family wants to move to Tel Aviv, we'll pay for everything, go out there. And it was a non-starter for me. I knew it in the moment. I was like, hey, we're having our first child. I want to be present. I've talked to Elise. We want to take this leave together. This is a pivotal moment in our life. I don't want to be traveling to Tel Aviv every few weeks and away from my daughter who's about to be born. And it was the first time in my life I ever turned down a promotion. And it was an interesting moment. It was a moment that, but I knew that what I was solving for had changed from when I joined the company, and this wasn't the right move for me. So, we had a great conversation. He said, "Hey, take your leave, and when you come back, we'll have another role for you. Like, I think we want to see you promoted. We want to see you taking on more. I hear that you can't move to Tel Aviv. We'll find the right thing." At the same time, I had a friend reach out that I worked with at McKinsey, and he had said, "Hey, we're at this company, Snap One. You've never heard of us. We built a bunch of really cool technology that goes into homes, home theaters, automation systems, shades, all these cool things. We need a new head of strategy." I was like, "Hey, I'm about to have a kid. Like, I'm literally about to have a kid, and I've got a bunch of leave. I'm not about to leave where I'm at." And he was like, "Hey, just talk to our CEO. Just have a conversation with John. If nothing else, you get to meet a really great leader based here in Atlanta." And I went to a coffee that I thought was going to be a coffee chat and turned into like a multi-hour discussion. And I knew walking away from it, I wanted to join the company. And for me, it was all about professional development and people. I knew that I wanted to work for this leader. I knew that I wanted to lead people, and I thought it was really important at that point in my career to work with a leader who had the same values and the same skills and the way that they led as I wanted to build. So I left. I joined Snap One. I joined the executive team. I got to be the head of strategy for a public company, and I developed a ton of skills. For the past 2 years, I've been doing that. About 7 months ago, Snap One, the company I was at, we're a public company, about 1.1 billion in revenue. We were acquired by a bigger public company. So I helped lead that acquisition process. And now I'm vice president of global strategy for the bigger company. So we're about 4.6 billion, doing business around the world, selling technology, distribution, and manufacturing. And I talk a whole bunch around what I do, but that's not the point of this talk. If there's questions, glad to chat about it. And to me, the phase that I'm in right now, each day of life is measured by the quality of the time that I spend with the people that I care about. You can see Elise, you can see our daughter, Etsy. I love being a dad. It's more joy than anything. I actually just flew back from Europe last night, and my daughter was asleep, and I was hurt because I got back late and she was already asleep. So I woke up this morning. The first thing I did is I wanted to go see my daughter, and see her as soon as she woke up. And that means everything in the world to me. And actually, you could come to me, going back to that analogy of walking through the snow with shorts on. You could tell me, "Jacob, you could be the CEO, pick your company today." I know exactly what I would say, and the answer would be no. Because I don't want to do that right now. I want to be a great father. I want to be present. And there will come another season in my life where I will be able to lean in more to work and split my time differently. But that's not the season I'm in right now. And balance is really important to me. So when I look across my career, this is what I see. I see starting off solving for compensation, then thinking more about professional development and progression, and so pivoting all the way to the other side and being focused on purpose. Then I wanted a little bit of balance as I got the public sector and moved into the private. And now I've really been focused on working with great people and learning skills that I know get me where I want to be in 5-10 years. And when I look at the story like that, it makes perfect sense. I made decisions that made a lot of sense for what was going on in my life at the time and what I thought was most important around my own value set. But when I look at the labels and the logos and the roles, it makes no sense at all. Because you look like you're jumping across sectors and doing all these crazy things. But I sit here today and, I'm less than 10 years into my professional career. And I can say that I feel really confident that I made great decisions, and I've been in the right places at the right times, and I've solved for the right things that matter. And I feel super fulfilled in the career that I've built so far, and even more excited about the career that's coming. So that's my career so far. I want to share 5 or so thoughts on the weather. And hopefully it'll be helpful. I'll go through these quickly. Plant the flag, sprint towards it until I move it. That has been one of my mantras, and I think it's really important. You're going to come out of school and you're going to ask these existential questions around, like, who do I want to be in life and what do I want to do? And my advice to you is do exactly what you do in engineering or in science. Set a hypothesis. Plant a flag and say, I want to be the president of the United States, or I want to be the CEO of a company, or I want to lead a nonprofit, or, I want to build my own business. Plant that flag and run towards it. Like, don't overthink it. Don't do all these things. You're going to have a long career ahead. Plant a flag, run towards it. And at some point, pick your head up and look and say, is that flag still right? And am I still moving in the right direction? And guess what? That flag might be the right place, or you might move it a little bit. I know I've moved mine a couple times throughout my career, but don't get stuck with the whole existential question and not move because of it. Make a decision, set a hypothesis, run towards it, test it. You might actually find out that based on what you're doing, where you planted the flag is totally wrong. Or you may find out that you moved into a space that you love. And actually where you planted the flag is wrong because you didn't know the things that you know now and you really want to move in a different direction. So that's piece of advice 1. 2, champions are made in the off season. It's my time to recover and refocus. It's also my time to look at where I planted my flag. Every time I've made a career change, every time I've pivoted from something, I've been relentless. I'm taking time off. Relentless. My first job, McKinsey & Company, I got the offer. I was supposed to start. A week after I signed the offer, I actually called in and I was like, hey, I've changed my mind. This is a bold move. I don't exactly advise doing it like this, but I was like, hey, I need to push back my start date 6 months. They're like, you want to push back your start date 6 months? I was like, yeah, it's very important to me. And guess what? Push it back 6 months. And I spent 6 months backpacking Southeast Asia. I took a motorcycle across Vietnam. I backpacked South America. I did these things that I knew I would not be able to do again. I would not get a window like this to really go and explore. I just finished up all this school and I want to go off and do all these amazing things in the world. What better time to go and see the world, reflect on who I am before I go and I start running? I mentioned when I left, when I left McKinsey, did a little bit of travel. When I left the mayor's office, Elisa and I took 3 months off. We said, I'm not going to sit here and wait until I'm going to, just go and we'll figure it out. We were on the road. I was interviewing. I got an offer. They're like, we want you to start in a week. I was like, I'm not starting for 3 months. Like, it's just a non-starter for me. And guess what? We waited 3 months. Everything was okay. So taking time to rest, recover, reflect, and that reflect word being very important is super important. And don't let somebody else's timeline prevent yours. Because you're running a long race. You got a lot of life and a lot of career ahead of you. And you got to make sure that, you're really reflecting and recovering. I found that I may know the season, but the weather. So I took 3 months off. And Elisa and I got in the car and we started driving. We got up to Chicago. We spent a weekend with some friends. We got in the car and we were off to the Badlands of South Dakota. We're going to go stay in this awesome national park. Never been to, saw great pictures. And on the way to South Dakota, got a call that my mom had a stroke. And we didn't know what was going on. And we turned the car around and we drove 16 hours straight back to Atlanta. And what I thought was going to be 3 months of backpacking America ended up being 3 months of spending time with mom every single day until she passed away. No idea that was going to happen. But by far, one of the most meaningful periods of my life. And I know that there's no way that if I was working, I would have had the courage to step away and say, I'm going to go and spend this time with my mother. I got very lucky that I was already taking the time off, but I had no doubt exactly what I was going to do. So, you may think that you're in, the middle of summer and everything's amazing, or you may think it's totally winter and it's dark and it's gloomy, but you never know what's going to come. And I was in a period of just total elation of this amazing trip I was going to do. And the next thing you know, I think I have rain clouds over my head, and they were rain clouds. But I look back on it and I'm like, that was some of the best time of my life, the most meaningfully spent time I've ever had. And, I have zero regrets around being there and being at her side as we went through that as a family. Another important piece that I've had to learn and I've had to balance is living my purpose doesn't mean living my passion every day. I got to spend time in city government. We did some awesome things. And I felt like I was living my passion every day. I felt like I was living my purpose. But you've got to realize, and I've tried to realize, that the career is long and what purposes will evolve for you. And just because you're not doing the dream job today doesn't mean that the dream job won't happen throughout your career. And it doesn't mean that there's not purpose in what you're doing. So, as you're making decisions, you're thinking about your life and your career, it's really awesome to get the perfect job. But the perfect job doesn't really exist, and you can't do the perfect job every day for your whole career. And having that wherewithal to understand that is really important as you're making decisions. It's also important because sometimes your passion and your purpose won't be your full-time job. One of the things I do outside of work, now that I work at a company that builds products and manufactures and sends them across the country, it is not my purpose in life. I know that for a fact, but I'm also on the board of MARTA, on the board of directors. And that's something that does bring me a lot of purpose, something I care a lot about, public transportation ability in Atlanta. And throughout your life, you'll have the ability to balance those things. And you may be doing this fast track career that's doing all these things that may not be your ultimate purpose. You've got all these other pieces in your life that you can balance and create something that fulfills you. And then last but not least, took some time. When I was sitting in the chair, when I was coming over to Dr. Burns and talking about my grade on an exam, I thought it was all about me. Like I was thinking about this exam and how it was going to impact this progression of this amazing career that I was going to go build to go and make an impact in the world in all these ways. And it's taken me some years to realize that it was never about work. Now that I'm a leader in a company, it's really all about the people that I'm working with. I've got 3 messages up here. These are text messages that I've tried to cover up the names from people that I take a ton of pride in, actually maybe more pride in the things that I do. One of them was somebody who I used to manage at VIA, who was looking for a career transition. They hadn't done one in 6 years. It was their first job change. And, I helped coach them through it. I helped them think through their decision. I was a reference. She landed a new job. I was so happy. And she was so happy to find something new. And I was really happy to be a part of it. I had an intern who's now working in private equity, or he's still in consulting, but he got his first private equity job. Private equity is not for me, but it was for him. And I was really happy to be able to coach him and talk to him and see him grow. And then this was from another one of, he actually went to tech a couple years behind me. He got accepted a bunch of MBA programs, and I'd helped think through his application and his interviews and all of that. And there's a whole other list of people that I've had the fortune to be able to help mentor or coach or whatever it may be. And like, that is joy to me. That is what it's all about. Like the journey is really about the people. And by the way, this is me telling my story of the people that I've been a part of. There's a whole other story of people, many who are sitting in this room, who have had that mark on my life. And all the legacy that I'm trying to create with other people, they brought to me, and they've helped me think about like who I want to be and how I work through challenges and how I think about problems in the world. And you have no idea right now, but there are people that are sitting in this room, professors that you've interacted with, that you will admire for the rest of your life, and will have a mark on you for the rest of your life. And you'll be thinking about 15 years from now in a way you never thought you would. So, this is probably the most important message as you're thinking about your career. You won't know it right away, but it's a team sport. And the greatest joy is not winning the championship. It's winning the championship with your team. And that's going to be an awesome journey. So I'll close out. I'll come back where I started. Abraham, I am so jealous of you. And the reason I'm so jealous of you and every single person in this room is the next 10 years of your life will be awesome. Somebody came to me before I started McKinsey. I got really fortunate. I got invited to a conference in South Africa. And this guy, he had just wrapped up his Rhodes Scholarship. And he was about to start his career at McKinsey. And I was about to start my Marshall, and I didn't know if I would go to McKinsey afterwards. And he said this to me. He said, "I'm so jealous of you." And I didn't understand in the moment because I was thinking, dude, you just wrapped up a Rhodes Scholarship and you're starting your career. You're about to go work at McKinsey. You're about to make all this money. I'm about to, go back into school. And he was like, "I'm so jealous of you. You have no idea what the next 2 years of your life are going to be like." And it stuck with me. It stuck with me. And I think about it a lot when I'm talking to folks. Because I look back on, the 10, 15 years since I left Georgia Tech, and I have nothing but excitement. And I also know that the next 10 to 15 years are going to be amazing. So as you're kind of making decisions and you're stepping to the next stage, it can all feel really daunting. You feel, well, you get that one bad grade and you feel like the world is crashing down on you and you're going to miss that opportunity that you always wanted. But the reality is your best years are ahead of you. In the next 10 years, you're going to do some awesome things. And for that, I'm super jealous. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, so we are going to move into the Q&A portion. So just raise your hand, and then myself or Ms. Laura over there will come and give it to you. I can start us off with a question. My question for you is, so you kind of graduated with a civil engineering degree, got these other scholarships, these other master's degrees in finance and things like that. How do you feel like the civil engineering curriculum at Tech kind of prepared you to do something that may be kind of outside of traditional like civil engineering industry?
Absolutely. Everything I've done since my degree at Georgia Tech has been quite easy. Period. Like, this is foundational. Like, what you do in civil engineering is foundational because it's problem solving. Like, I don't say it because like we're in this room. Genuinely, like every day I'm asking the question, how do we grow our company by another $1 billion? I've worked and consulted for a ton of companies and asked really hard questions around how they don't go into bankruptcy or how they grow the next whatever. And fundamentally, it all comes down to problem solving. It just comes down to problem solving. It comes down to understanding that I can take a problem that is very daunting, that I don't know how to solve. I can put pieces together or frameworks or equations and think through, all right, this is the way I would approach it. And then I can approach it the best way that I can, realizing this is what I learned in engineering that I didn't have to deal with at any point in school prior, was that like, there isn't a right answer. There are answers and there are ways to think about them and think through the problem. So everything I've done since, like, it has been the same thing. It's just been, I kind of say it's like, if I learn calculus, like, and I learn Spanish, I can do calculus in Spanish. Like, it's not, it's not. And for me, the problem solving is the really hard part. And when I was a consultant, like, the people who were really great that I admired, many of them were engineers, civil engineers or other engineers, because it's just a problem solving framework that you can apply to anything, whether it be business, whether it be technical things. The other master's degrees, like, compared to the masters and undergrad at tech, like, absolutely, like, this is the point you really get challenged. And after that, it's really all about application. And I think that this is a degree that you can apply to so many things, or at least I've tried to.
Any other questions?
Already, you're first. Okay. Hello. Okay. When asking for rather extensive time off or a later start date, how did you approach that with your employer? Was there any pushback? Was there kind of like a debate about it? I'm just kind of wondering about that process.
Great question. I kind of gave some dangerous advice. So what you don't want to do is be like, hey, I appreciate the offer. I'll see you in 6 months. But I think, like, step one, know what you value, right? I wouldn't say like push back a start date because you just want to push back a start date. Like, I always tell people, you shouldn't be saying no to something. You should always be saying yes to something else, right? So know what you want to do with that time. And I think if you know exactly what you want to do with that time, it makes it much easier to have the conversation in authentic and genuine way. And pushing back on it. It's much tougher to say, hey, I just want some more time before I start. It's much easier to say, hey, I have this experience that I've been wanting to do for the last 5-10 years, and I have an opportunity to do it. And it's really important to me. And I actually think I'm going to be able to start this job way more refreshed, way more focused, with way more perspective. And that's super important to me. And the question you have to ask ultimately is, how do you have that conversation with the right people at the right time throughout the process, right? Some processes, you can have that up front. Sometimes you need to have it later in the process, but it shouldn't be something you throw in at the last second with a curveball. And you're saying like, it's this or that, we're negotiating down the barrel of a gun. So I've just always tried to like be authentic about it and let them know like what's really important to me. And what I have found is when you're being authentic, people respond well to it. And, and if people don't respond well to your authenticity, it's also a good indicator of maybe the organization that you're joining or what you're heading towards.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. So over the years, you've had a lot of different changes in your life. How did you navigate the doubt or anxiety that comes from being uncertain of what's coming next?
Essentially, I was at a conference in DC a couple of weeks ago, and somebody gave a talk on resilience. And they were talking about how important it is to be resilient and how much more important it's becoming, in large part because of how fast change is occurring in the world, and, blah, 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 blah. And I think that the best way to have confidence in change is to change often, right? Like put yourself in positions that make you uncomfortable. And what really happens is, as you start to put yourself in positions that make you uncomfortable or solving problems that you didn't think you could solve, you start to realize that actually it's just a process. And I got to work through the process to get to the outcome. And I think when you don't realize that, when you haven't got through enough reps on it, all you have is doubt. You're like, can I climb this mountain? Well, I don't know. I've never climbed that mountain. Then you climb that mountain. Well, can I ride the bike 100 miles? And then you ride a bike 100 miles. You're like, wow, I just did 2 things I never thought I could do. I'd never done before. What's next? And somebody's gonna be like, hey, do you want to, come and run a marathon? I'm gonna sit there and be like, I could never run 26.2 miles. But like I learned how to climb a mountain and I learned how to ride a bike 100 miles. I'll figure it out. And I think there's a little bit of that. And that requires you to get out of your comfort zone. And it requires you not to do it once, but to do it 5 times, right? And guess what? Out of those 5 times, you might fail once, but you'll probably succeed 4 times. And when you start to say, hey, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at trying things and doing them, it just starts becoming part of what you do. And like, I feel really fortunate with that skill set because now I can walk into any room, any situation, any company, and I know I can add value. And the question I'm asking is what value and how do I add it? But until you do that a few times, it is very scary. You have a lot of doubt. I had a lot of imposter syndrome and all these different pieces, but you do it enough times, all of a sudden you're like, this is what I do. And you're super comfortable and it becomes a strength rather than an area that, gives you concern.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, so I was wondering, you were very involved on campus extracurricularly during your time at Georgia Tech. So were there any particular experiences or memories that have really impacted or influenced the way you've approached life since?
Yeah. I would say I moved across a lot of social groups. Like I was an athlete first and I kicked it with athletes. And then I joined my fraternity, Alpha, and I kicked it with a lot of folks who were in like the Black student community. And then I got involved in like a lot of other organizations that were in the Black student groups, and I got to meet a whole nother social circle. So one of the things that I really appreciated was I felt like I moved through a lot of different groups of people, and I left Georgia Tech feeling like I had a really good network of people with a lot of different experiences. So I'd say that's one, too. I tried to lean into student leadership a lot. And I think it taught me a lot about how I want to lead. And that's evolved a ton. Like that's a continuous journey throughout your life. But until you put yourself in a leadership position, you may find like, hey, I don't like being in a leadership position. I like being in, like, some people love to be the president, some people love to be the vice, some people love to be the chief of staff. And I think as you learn those things in college, it helps you think about your career. And I actually always thought I was a president. I always thought I was like the person who was going to be out front when I was in college. And actually, since I graduated college, I've realized actually I'm like most effective in the number 2 seat. Like I'm really good as a chief of staff. I'm really good as like a VP of strategy where I'm working with the CEO to help manage the team and think things through. So, I think part of it, like the two things, just to sum it up: one, moving through different groups of people and making sure you have a good network, you have a lot of good experiences. And then two, stepping into leadership to figure out what you like, figure out how you lead, figure out what seat you want to be on the bus. Because you could be on any seat. Going back to what I talked about before, just because you're on the bus doesn't mean you should. It's going to be the same for you. Yeah.
Hello. I am someone who's super passionate about traveling, especially professionally. And since you have so much experience like living abroad and traveling for work, how do you suppose someone that's also interested achieve these goals?
Ooh, that's a good question. I want to give good advice and not flippant advice. I would say one. All right, so there's two types of travel. One is for work. One is personal. On the personal travel front, I was really thoughtful when I was in school. And I said, when I was in grad school, I said, hey, I tutored a bunch and I took all that money and I put it into savings, and I knew that number, and I knew it supports months of living a certain lifestyle. So like, see, I was like living in hostels and moving on buses and doing all these things, but I got to see everything I wanted to see. So I'd say one, like a personal front, if you really want to travel personally, it's expensive, but it's not that expensive, and it's not that expensive if you plan for it. And I knew I wanted to take an extended period, so I planned for it financially so I could go do it. So that's one on the personal front. I also, like when I left McKinsey, I planned, I was like, I need to save this much so I could have flexibility on the decisions I make afterwards. So I think like being financially responsible can give you the flexibility on the personal side. On the professional side, what I'll say is, like, as you start your career, everybody's looking for the international job, or like the job that allows them to do all these things. And that's really hard. It's really hard to get those types of experiences until you start to show that you can add value to an organization and they want to bring you into these different experiences. So my one piece of advice there is to obviously like work hard, deliver, but then let your interests be known, right? I was at a conference the other day, and I won't forget, there was a store manager who came over to me. He said, I'm really interested in operation. I'd love to have conversations. I this wouldn't happen overnight, but like I would love to know how we do it. And him and I have set up checkpoints throughout quarterly to talk about like how you think about positioning for that type of opportunity, what those opportunities could be like, what some of the trade-offs would be like. So on the professional front, I think it's really just to let people know your interests. And that way they know when those type of things come up, they can match you with it, as well as they could be helpful and you move in that direction, regardless of what company or career you're at. Cool. All right.
All right. I am now going to turn it over to Miss Hannah for the gift presentation.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I know I had a lot of great takeaways from it, and I'm sure everybody else in the room did as well. And I just want to present this gift to you as a small token of our appreciation at the school.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I really enjoyed your talk. Some great insights in the early part of your career, because I know you're not done and you got a lot of exciting things ahead of you as well. Just want to make a couple connections. If you didn't make this before, Harrison, who was helping with the Q&A, he was elected to Georgia Tech royalty this year, which is the modern version of Mr. Georgia Tech. So they've changed the name, but it's still the same spirit, certainly. So that's a really nice connection to a current student. Also, I couldn't help noticing Dr. Amakuzi Kennedy just beaming during your talk, and she's so proud of you. I think all of our faculty are proud of you. One of the great things this year is we've had a couple of younger alums give talks and for the Hyatt lecture, and to see them as students and now move into the early stages of their career and have such great success as you've had is just really gratifying, and we're just so proud of our students, and so that's a really nice add on to your presentation today. For everybody that registered, we have lunch in the Mason lobby, and so please stick around and visit with your your students in the peer group here, as well as with Jacob for a few minutes. And I believe that is everything. I will stop talking and let you guys enjoy your lunch. Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you, Jacob.